Hey, folks, and welcome into the Midstate 48. Back for another week of high school football talk in Middle Tennessee. Chris Brooks along with you, and everybody's on board this week. Scott Burton, Cam Reed, Tom Duggan. Gentlemen, welcome.
Good to be here.
We get a week in the books, and we get to overreact this week. So, like everybody else does, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to have fun with this. So, that's what's coming up in our second segment. Had some interviews scheduled that kind of fell through, so we're going to have a little fun with it. Regardless, let's get started. Thursday night, Scott, perhaps the catch of the year already thrown down.
Oh, wow.
Over at Procom. Chandler Johnson.
That was amazing. I mean, he stretched every bit of his 6'3" frame up and came down with that ball, and it was just an amazing catch. It really, I think it really it put Cane Ridge up, and really, I think it really got the team into it, and it was just amazing.
Cam, you got to see a lot of stuff happen from your house on Friday night. What stood out to you at week one?
The main thing that stood out to me, two performances really. The Page defense in that game against Fairview really controlled the game. Fairview couldn't get anything going. And then the best performance of week one, in my opinion, was NBA going on the road to Ravenwood and really dominating a matchup that most people expected to be a barn burner, and it wound up being a pretty lopsided football game.
Yeah. Tom, I know you were in the booth Friday night. What stood out to you from what you've seen from week one?
Well, some surprising performances. Hey, Springfield and Greenbrier. I thought, Greenbrier this was a good test for them to kind of see where they were going to be. And again, it's week one, so can we put all the eggs in one basket of this game? I don't think so. But Springfield came out. I thought Devin Crenshaw had a fantastic performance in week one. Got Springfield's season off to a good start. That was one. And I tell you, that game Saturday night, I got to watch some of the Smith County-Gordonsville game, and close for the first half, but Smith County asserted their will in the second half. And, guys, I tell you what, I heard the coach talking about conditioning and how they put a lot of emphasis on conditioning this year. It paid off in the fourth quarter. That Smith County team looks a lot better than what we saw last year. I think they're going to be a very tough team to beat throughout the course of the season.
Yeah, that was one thing that really kind of jumped out to me in the games that we covered was the number of kids cramping and the number of times that we had stoppages in play. It wasn't so much injuries as it was really just cramping and, the humidity. And I know, these teams go through training and conditioning and all that. But you really have to shout out to those teams who seem to not be as affected by it. And Smith County was one of those teams in that game on Saturday night.
Yeah, a lot of stoppages for cramps and a lot of stoppages for players having their pants above their knee. They are enforcing that in droves this year. In that Smith County-Gordonsville game, I saw at least a half dozen kids sent off for not having those pants down below their knees. And sometimes there were multiple on one play. So the officials are serious about it, and they're sending them off left and right. And it's kind of a big problem. And I did happen to hear on the sideline one kid say, "They don't have pants that fit me." And the official next to him was like, "You got to get bigger pants anyway. I don't care."
Yeah.
So I know supply chain issues have been what they are, and maybe that may be part of it. But come on, you got to have.
That's been happening for a couple of years now, and it's good to see the officials and the TSSAA really take a stand against players. At a certain point it becomes a safety issue, and I'm glad that the officials are looking out for the well-being of the players.
Yeah, their knee pads are an issue or for a reason. I mean, they're supposed to cover the knee, but a lot of them have been wearing them like bicycle shorts, and that's been annoying to see over the last couple of years for sure. And I'm glad to see that they're taking it seriously. So, also some surprising scores and results from week one, and that was another thing that stood out. It had teams like DCA that lost their opener to Middle Tennessee Christian. Gallatin knocking off Mount Juliet. Some others, Ravenwood getting blown out by an MBA, and That was kind of surprising, guys. Was there a result that stood out to you more than anything else?
Well,
Scott, you can start.
yeah, the first one jumps out at me is McGavick over Clarksville. I thought that that's a good sign for that Metro school, uh, uh, being able to knock off a formidable team as Clarksville is. I thought that was a really good result for them.
Cam.
Yeah, you heard us talk about the Blackman and Brentwood game on Sunday on our Sunday scoreboard show. Um, that was a surprising game because I believe Blackman answered the biggest question that most people had for them coming into the season is, how much could that defense improve? The defense played pretty good, giving up 23 points, 3 field goals, 2 touchdowns. But the big thing for Blackman were they couldn't finish the drives. Quarterback Jack Reisner threw for almost 300 yards. I mean, they had all the stats favored Blackman, but they couldn't finish drives. Huge win there for the Bruins at home, and one of our 10 games of the week this week. Blackman gets a huge test with that Gallatin team that knocked off Mount Juliet there in week 1.
Yeah, Tom.
A couple of scores really stood out to me, guys. Siegel over Green Hill, 13-6, and was kind of surprised when I saw that. I don't know how that game necessarily played out, but was very surprised to see that in week 1. Siegel maybe a little bit improved this year. It seems like they've had a pretty strong preseason and a big win for them. And Station Camp with a 3-score win over White House was kind of surprised by the margin of victory in that game. Those were a couple of games that kind of stood out in terms of the final scores.
Yeah, for sure. That was one for sure. That's been a closer game in the last couple of years, Scott.
Yeah, one game that stood out to me, the result was what we thought it might be, but the score was not, and that was the Riverdale-Franklin game, and how well Franklin played against Riverdale, holding them to 14. And, in fact, we're leading, I believe, late in that, within the fourth quarter, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Franklin had a 10-7 lead with 5.5 to go.
Yeah, and I mean that's something that is going to bear watching those two teams going forward. Is it an improvement thing on the Franklin side, or is it a faltering thing on the Riverdale side? It was week 1, so you kind of have to take that with a grain of salt. But the bottom line is that was a very, very competitive game for a Franklin team that quite frankly has struggled of late.
Yeah, and some of those questions have a third choice. Is it somewhere in the middle? Could it be a combination of both? Because,
yes,
with a team like Riverdale that lost some key pieces on defense, one has to wonder, if a step back is in order for them, or is it just week 1 jitters? And that's what we're going to overreact about in the next segment. But one important piece of business to get to, and that is our Player of the Week award, presented by Miracle Ford and Miracle Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in Gallatin. So a lot of worthy candidates up for we had 7 finalists: Zach Beard from East Nashville, Zakian Brinkley from Gallatin, Ty Clark III from FRA, Anthony Crowell from Lebanon, Chance Fitzgerald from Nolensville, Ben Marshall from Blackman, and Jonathan Moore from MBA. You could have went to 615preps.com and voted for your favorite as fans as well. You guys do get a vote in the process, and so do we. So this year we're going to reveal our votes on this show. And first, we're going to tell you who won the fan vote. And it was down to, Scott, I think it was around 100 votes that separated 2 players.
That's correct.
Fitzgerald got the vote from the fans from Nolensville. So he gets the first vote in this process. Scott, you went with Zach Beard.
I did. I thought that that was a big time performance against a big time team in Father Ryan.
Yeah. Cam, you went with Zakian Brinkley from Gallatin.
I did. 194 yards, 3 touchdowns. Really a guy that came out of nowhere. We were looking at that Ethan Chris, Jaheim Merriweather matchup there in that game. And the big fullback there for Gallatin had a huge game. And really, the reason why I picked Brinkley for this week's Player of the Week, not really because of just the stats, but because of the game that it was in. Fitzgerald had a good game. Beard had a really good game against tough competition. But Brinkley had that type of game in a game where they were probably the underdog. So that's why I went with Zakian Brinkley.
Okay. Tom, You went with Anthony Carroll from Lebanon.
Yeah, you know what? I think Lebanon, this could be a big time season for them. You know, Jalen Abston is a senior quarterback. And I look at this performance by Kroll, and anytime a kid touches the ball 5 times, racks up 184 yards and scores 4 times on those 5 touches. He had 2 touchdown receptions. He had an interception return for a touchdown, and I believe an 88-yard kickoff return. Pretty fantastic night, just touching the ball 5 times, what he was able to do.
And that, I think, was in about a quarter of action, too, against Antioch, that he piled up those stats. And that leaves my vote. And I warned y'all that some of y'all were going to hate me this week. And with a 4-way tie so far, a lot of y'all are about to hate me. But my vote and the winner of the first Player of the Week award by Miracle Auto Group is Gallatin's Zakai Brinkley. When you rush for 411 yards as a team and one player has half of that, that's a heck of a night. And like Cam said, that was a game that Gallatin was probably picked to lose by a lot of people. So that kind of tipped it for me. I'm going with Brinkley to take our first Player of the Week award. So congratulations to Zakai Brinkley from Gallatin. He is our first Miracle Auto Group Player of the Week award. And funny enough, that it's coming from a Gallatin company. So speaking of Miracle Auto Group, let's hear from
Hi everyone, it's Jim Galvin, Miracle Ford, your Ford dealer in Gallatin, Tennessee since 1980. Great news, beginning now. When you need service, we can come to you.
Our mobile service van comes to you wherever you are, whether you need oil changes, lube, routine maintenance, warranty, filters, wiper blades, batteries, bulbs, recalls, and more.
Visit our website
or call us now.
Are you ready for a miracle?
Thanks to Miracle Auto Group for sponsoring our Player of the Week award and for the Midstate 48, which they'll do every week this season. Make sure and go check them out.
Absolutely.
Well, let's get on to some of these overreactions from week 1. First one I want to talk about is Blackman. Well, we mentioned them just a few moments ago. 23-14 loss at Brentwood. And Cam, you mentioned that the failure to finish drives was a big reason why. So let me ask this question to you guys, and you guys can overreact as much or as little as you want. Is Blackman's offense the problem, or is week 1 just an aberration?
Blackman's offense is not the problem. The yards were there. The first downs were there. The performances were there. Ben Marshall up for Player of the Week in our poll there with 200 yards receiving. The offense is not the problem. It's just a little bit of week 1, some stuff they have to work through. You can believe Coach Tigard will get that Blaze offense rolling. Could be here Friday night in week 2.
Yeah, I believe Blackman really suffered from a problem with finishing drives. They were only 3 for 12 on 3rd down, 1 for 6 on 4th down, if I'm not mistaken. So the issue, if there is an issue offensively, it was their rushing. Only 23 yards rushing, and that probably led to some drives not being converted, some 3rd downs not being converted. So, but, I mean, when you have 312 yards of total offense, you probably should be putting more than 14 points on the board.
Yeah, indeed. I think the offense will be just fine. Coach Tigard, you know, he's got this system. Again, he's had 1 full year to work with his team. He's got some veterans back on that offensive side of the ball. I think the offense is going to be just fine. Just week 1, guys, a lot of times we say it week 1, if anything's going to go wrong, it usually does in week 1, and I think they'll be just fine.
I agree with all 3 of y'all. It's not really an overreaction. Blackman's offense has too many weapons to be around that 14-point range for very long. They will have to do better in finishing drives, especially this week, and the running game has to pick up a little bit here and there, or else there may be more of these on the horizon. But I'm on the board. I think they'll be all right as well. DCA 19-7 lost to Middle Tennessee Christian. Ashton Jones was held in check. I think it's like 50 plus yards, and that was it for them. The defending single A champs in Division 2 start off with a loss for the first time in a couple of years. Let's talk about them for a bit.
Yeah, I don't think this is as telling about DCA necessarily as it is about Middle Tennessee Christian. Reading up on some of their social media on Twitter, they took the lack of respect in the preseason to heart, and they come out determined in that game on the road at DCA and really came out and made a statement. DCA does have some holes that they have to figure out, but I have full faith in Coach Wade there at DCA. He's going to get that turnaround. But Middle Tennessee Christian come out and proved that they're not no pushover here in 2022.
Yeah, I think that DCA is going to take some time for them to fill some roles to get their offense back on track. I mean, they had some big losses, and I think they'll get there sooner than later. It's just a combination of a really big game first week, the Cougars coming out very fired up, and against a team that is still trying to find its identity.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you guys. I think it's more Middle Tennessee Christian might be a little bit better than we thought. In DCA, like you mentioned, Scott, they've got some holes they've still got to fill, so they're probably still working through some things early in the season. I think DCA will be better as the season goes along, but I think Middle Tennessee Christian, they felt the disrespect. They went out and made a statement on Friday night. Hats off to them. Keep an eye on this team. I'll be interested to see how well they can do this year.
Yeah, their key games are going to come later in the season. But this is a statement win for Middle Tennessee Christian. DCA really needed to develop a quarterback and some pass catchers because that were their biggest losses on offense from last year. Most of their line was back, and most of the key players in defense are back, but there's not a lot of depth there. So, yeah, I'm in agreement as well. Middle Tennessee Christian could be a lot better than we thought, but that Week 11 game is still going to determine everything that they have in front of them. Another one I want to talk about is Ravenwood. Big loss to NBA. Should we be worried about Ravenwood just a little bit, or is NBA that good?
I think it's a little both. I mentioned last week part of the reason why I picked NBA in that game was because NBA is a veteran team that's been there in big games, real senior heavy. The Ravenwood team faces a lot of pressure, especially early on here in the season, being the favorites out of that western side in 6A. It'll be a huge test for Ravenwood. They have a game that could be a competitive game against BGA on Thursday night, but a game that I feel like the Raptors can rebound a little bit on, and that's important for the Raptors to, get started in the right direction. They kind of saw where they were at. Had a bad performance in Week 1 against a really good NBA team. So I think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah, it's a little bit the way they started out last year, taking it on the chin at NBA. But the issue is this year, you were hoped that some of those mistakes and things like that would have been cleared up. But once again, you're going into the beginning of the season. I think NBA is a much better team. I think they're a much more rounded team than they've been. I think they have more size up front. They kept Chris Parson running for his life. He was sacked twice in the game. So I think that this is part of Will Hester's plan. Play these tough teams. You may not get the result you want, but it's going to test your team. They're going to grow stronger for it, so that when they're on down the road, they'll have iron sharpens iron, right? So they're going to be sharper for it when it really matters.
Yeah, I think this NBA team is really good, guys. And again, for Ravenwood, it'll pay off for them down the road. This much ballyhooed quarterback matchup that everyone was talking about. And one player really stood out the other night that maybe not getting enough love is Jonathan Moore. 177 yards, 2 touchdowns on 17 carries. The run game was it was really huge there in that game for NBA, and I thought really a statement win for them. I thought this would be a much closer football game. I think NBA really flex a muscle and show how good they really are.
Yeah, Jonathan Moore was one of those that I considered strongly for picking for Player of the Week. He had a big night for them, and nobody really knew his name that much until that Ravenwood game. So now it's going to be out there, and people are going to be looking at him for weeks to come, especially this week against Procon. A little both. I mean, Ravenwood, yeah, you guys are right. I think it's Ravenwood's going to get better from this, and Will Hester does have a plan for them. They have a tough schedule as far as like non-region games go, so they'll be improved. They'll be fine. NBA might just be the favorite in Division II AAA, even though McCauley will still have a lot to say about it. Right. Another one I want to ask about Gordonsville. Loss on Saturday night to Smith County. They did not look particularly good in any phase, honestly. Some things that got to be cleaned up by that group if they're going to be a contender in 1A as people think they might.
Yeah, they've got a weapons shortage. on the outside. I think Albritton is missing some of his weapons to throw to, and believe me, against Smith County, size matters. You're not gonna run very much on that front. So I think in this particular case, it was just once again, they're trying. It's a team in week one that's trying to fill some holes again for some major losses, and they ran into a team that was well motivated to to win this game.
I agree. I mean, another thing that you hate to see, especially in week one, that Gordonsville team's a little banged up there in week one, and honestly, according to some over in that area, things did not get better on Saturday, as they have a couple more guys banged up that may not be able to play on Friday against Watertown. But I really think that this game. It's a testament to Coach Dyer and Smith County getting those guys motivated. And Smith County really made a statement. This is one of Smith County's opportunities early in the season to prove that they were going to get off on a quick start. Last year, they got off to a rough start. Towards the end of the year, they were a really good football team. This year, that opening week win against Gordonsville is really a statement to everybody else, letting them know that the Owls mean business here in 22.
Yeah, I think a lot of factors were working against Gordonsville. Talk about him being banged up. Matthew Albritton was questionable, I think, right up to maybe the day before the game. They didn't even know if he'd play at all. And then you look and you realize they don't have the weapons around him that they expected maybe to have right out of the gate this year. And then you get a Smith County team that comes in with all that size, that depth, the fact that they were well-conditioned. And what about the performance by Caden Powell at quarterback for Smith County? Gordonsville had no answers for him at all throughout the course of the football game. Not to mention, we've got the new coach coming in, and I know we've got high expectations for Steven Jackson. I think Gordonsville's going to be okay. They get Watertown this week, guys, and I think that's going to be a good barometer. How much different will we see them play this week against Watertown than what we saw in week one with what I think is really a better Smith County team than I expected?
It was a kind of a bad sign for Gordonsville early on in that game when Albritton got sacked on back-to-back plays to start the game. He was running for his life most of the night. The protection wasn't there for him against that Smith County front. But then again, given the size of that front, there's not a lot of teams that are going to be able to block those guys. So Smith County, as we've said, massive front. They're going to cause problems for a lot of people. And Gordonsville will have to find a downfield threat at some point this season to be effective offensively. But they might be able to do that over time. One more that I want to talk about. Actually, you know what? I'm going to give you guys a wild card. If there's one that's in your mind that you want to talk about, let's do it here. Cam, I want to start with you. Who stands out in your mind that maybe we were overreacting about?
Charleston County. Took a tough week one loss to Friendship Christian, which I have as my preseason state champion in Division II 1A. I think they're on a lot of people's radars as at least a state title contender. This week, the Jackets go on the road to Upperman, which is a state title contender there in 4A. I believe there's a little overreaction. Yes, the Jackets are down compared to the last 4 years, coming off 4 straight semifinal appearances. But the Jackets have a lot of young, inexperienced players that are going to be experienced by the time that they get to the meat of their schedule. I really think the Jackets need to just try to, and I think what Coach Satterfield really wants is to kind of figure out what he's got. These first 2 games, they don't mean nothing. They're not region games. Yes, you may take it on the chin, but that week 3 matchup against East Robertson is the first game that Coach Satterfield has circled on his schedule as a game that he feels is winnable, and a lot of Jacket fans should feel is winnable. And that's a huge game if the Jackets want to continue their 34-year playoff streak.
Yeah, Charleston County to me is one of those teams that come November, they may very well be in the thick of it again. They're kind of built for November. And even though the numbers are down over there, they're still going to be a factor in whatever happens in 2A this year on that side of the bracket. So maybe it is a bit of an overreaction on my part, especially after that 42-20 I lost to Friendship Christian in week 1. But we'll see how they go going forward. Region play is going to be interesting in that region for sure.
I'm gonna go with Green Hill on my pick again. Going back to that game with Siegel, just in the fact that I was really stunned by that outcome. And, Green Hill's got Mount Juliet breathing down their necks. And, of course, Mount Juliet, they suffer a setback at the hands of Gallatin this week. So not a good start for the top two teams there in Region 5-5A. But, again, are we seeing, is Siegel better? I don't have a lot of information on this game to be able to really take a stab at what really happened there, but I was really surprised by that outcome. And that's going to be a tough region this year. Station Camp, I thought they had a big statement win the other night. Where's Wilson Central going to be? They've got Lebanon this week, and we'll find out a little more about them. And you got to keep an eye on Hillsboro, not to mention that White County team's got a 2,000-yard back. So not a good start for Green Hill. I don't think the kind of start they wanted to get their season off to.
Scott?
Probably to me, it's Greenbrier. They did suffer a bad loss against Springfield, a cross-county rivalry game. But I do believe that the competition they've got coming up is going to be more suited to what they do. They have some room to grow, and they've just made too many mistakes. They've got to fix. They gave Springfield way too many short fields. They did not do a good job of stopping big plays. They did do a good job of managing Springfield's running attack. It was just some big plays that got them, and in some timing issues with the quarterback. Quite frankly, they had open receivers. Flood was open several times. They were just a step away from breaking a run. And looking at their schedule going up, Springfield is one of the tougher teams they've got. I mean, they do have Pearl and all that on the schedule later, but I think that Greenbrier will have a chance to turn it around in the early part of this season and be much better as they go on.
Okay. All right, guys, good stuff in that segment. Several teams probably that we could also talk about, but we want to cut this a little bit shorter this week than we did last week. So let's take a quick break and hear from Innovate Medical. On to the third part of our show this week, and it is that time of the week again where we try to tell you who we think is going to win. Some of us did a better job than others last week. It is who you got. I'm going to show this once, and I never want to see it again.
Wow.
I'm going to tape it to my wall.
I thought I was going to be where you are, Chris, with some of my picks last week.
I'd play The Price is Right, fail warm, but I'm pretty sure that would be copyright stuff. So, yeah. However, I do take some solace in this next screen. Overall, we're all kind of right there together.
Yep.
So I nailed Northwest and Westmoreland with their wins. Scott, you had Lookout Valley over Mount Juliet Christian, Smith County's win over Gordonsville, and Warren East over White House Heritage. Tom picked on Brentwood, got Hunters Lane and McGavock wins correct, and Cam came up with Creekwood's wins. So congrats on those. Told you so, boys. Let's get on to the picks. I'm done with this. Freaking Portland Thursday night kicks us off, and all five of us are taking the home team of the Panthers in this one. Liberty Creek, first off, congratulations on that win over Jackson Central Marion week 1. Big for that program to start out with a W and not have to worry about getting that first one out of the way. They're going to have a little more of a test when they go up north to their neighbor in Sumner County in Portland on Thursday.
Yeah, I think that they're going to face a running attack in Portland that will be able to put points on the board. You know, Freddie Paxton had 163 yards rushing last week, and I think that they're going up a team that's an established program, and right now is not in the best of moods.
Right. Last week, Liberty Creek beats Jackson Central Marion, a team that's had fielding their first football team in 6 years. So sort of a level playing field there in that game. And the Wolves showed up big in that game. This week, I don't think it's as level of a playing field as Portland has the depth. They have the speed. They have the experience. I just like the Panthers to bounce back, honestly, in a pretty big way here in week 2.
And they may have to put up with the train hordes up there in Portland, too.
Always fun. If you've never called a game at Portland on the visiting side of the field in the press box when the train comes through, you've just not lived. But I do look for Portland to bounce back. We didn't even mention this game, guys, but Westmoreland ekes out a 14-13 win over Portland. I thought that was a great win for Westmoreland, by the way. But I do look for the Panthers to bounce back this Thursday night.
Yeah. 5 across. Portland's going to take all of our picks this week. Next one also on Thursday night, Smyrna at Rockville. Tom, you took Rockville. I'll start with you first.
I'm bitter because last week I picked against Smyrna. Probably knew better than to pick against Smyrna, and I probably do again this week. But I think Rockville got their season off to a pretty good start. They had a nice win over Laverne, and just for the fact that I'm bitter, I'm taking Rockville.
Yeah, big game here. Rutherford County game matchup between two teams from different regions. I love Arian Carter and that Bulldog running attack there, especially playing. They came up, had a big game last week against Stewart's Creek. I think they won by a bigger margin than what a lot of people thought in a 35-14 win. Really like this Bulldog team to get another win here in week 2.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, I think the Smyrna defense is the difference here. I think Arian Carter, Landon Miller, those guys on the other side of the ball actually make a difference in this game. I know that Rockville's gone to a no-huddle, up-tempo offense. It's going to be interesting to see, how Smyrna's defense reacts. They created turnovers on special teams and harassed Stewart's Creek last week. It'll be interesting to see if they can turn over Rockville this week and how effective they'll be.
The strength in Rockville's defense is in its secondary, but if they've got to go get Arian Carter several times on Thursday night, that's not a good sign for them. I'm going with the Bulldogs for that very reason.
Yep.
DeKalb County at Smith County. Scott, you're on the Tigers in this one. Why don't you start us off?
Yeah, as far as DeKalb County, Briz Trapp had a big game last week. He was 12 of 17, 161 yards. The offense put up 277 total, but they fumbled 4 times. They lost 2. They had a pick. They were 3 for 8 on third down. It's just a lot of things that they didn't do right. I honestly think, though, that this is a more dynamic offense than what they faced against Gordonsville, and that this team can actually throw on Smith County and bypass that big defensive line. So I'm thinking that this team being a little bit more dynamic will give Smith County fits, and I think it's a good test for Smith County early because they'll be facing some teams that'll come at them like this later on in the season.
Yeah, I agree with you, Scott. One thing that I thought about in this matchup, though, I did consider DeKalb to have a more explosive offense than Gordonsville. They have more weapons than Gordonsville. But the reason why I settled on the Owls was that big offensive line, not necessarily their defensive line. I think that they can control the clock and really control this ball game and keep it lower scoring, more in their realm of where they like to play instead of a high-scoring shootout like the Tigers intend to play.
Well, DeKalb County's got some size, too, and in that regard, I think they'll match up better with Smith County than Gordonsville was able to last week. But, going back on what you guys are talking about, I just feel like Smith County's got too much size, particularly on the offensive line. They're going to give DeKalb County some fits on that defensive line, but the Tigers can score. I was back and forth on this game. It was a very tough pick for me, but I just think Smith County, they do have a size advantage, just not much as much as they did against Gordonsville. Can DeKalb County score enough points? Can Smith County control the tempo of the football game on offense? If they can, they keep that DeKalb County offense off the field, I think they got a great chance at winning this game.
Yeah, I think that, and sorry, Chris, let me just interject in here because did bring up a good point about size. You have a really big quarterback. Containing the Smith County quarterback is going to be key.
Yeah.
And that's kind of leads into my point a little bit. Caden Powell is my key to this game because he's got the first game jitters out of the way against a big rival, a game that they won. He wasn't asked to do a whole lot other than just keep things in front of him. If he can do that again this week, well, who knows? I mean, he's got a good enough line to protect him. If he doesn't have to throw very much, I mean, they should be just fine. I like Smith County for the reason that Caden Powell is going to get better as a quarterback, not worse. Next one up after this, CPA at Brentwood Academy. And Cam, you've got BA all by yourself, so I'm going to let you take off with it.
Yeah, a huge win last week for CPA. Brentwood a little heartbroken after losing in overtime on the road against Eagles Landing. I just like Brentwood Academy because they're at home in this game. I was back and forth on this game, but I went with BA because it is a home game, and I think that they score a few more points than CPA. I think CPA coming off that big win last week will face a little bit tougher secondary with the Eagles, and I think Brentwood Academy winds up outscoring the Lions.
I think that game actually was at home at Brentwood Academy, if I'm not mistaken. I didn't want to correct you there, but I want to point that out because it was at home against Eagles Landing Christian. So, I'm going to take the CPA side real quick just because having watched him already in week one, London Humphreys is going to be a tough guy to cover, whoever's covering him. The jump ball in the end zone, I was really impressed with. He went up and got it, and not a lot of kids can do that at this level. And then the speed is something else. When you are a state champion track athlete, you have that speed to burn, and it's going to be a tough cover for them. And Thomas Vaccaro didn't play the whole game because, he didn't need to. Got a little bit banged up in week one, but he should be back in there and just fine for them. And the running game with multiple guys who can carry the load for them, it doesn't have to be. They kind of have that Cade Law, Langston Patterson dynamic from last year has kind of carried over with their backfield this year. So I'm really impressed with what I saw from CPA in week one. Scott, Tom,
I think that it's really going to be the CPA. Truthfully, I did this. I picked CPA because last year I picked against Engle and I regretted it. So, no, I really think that that CPA, that Brentwood Academy has a shot in this game. It's really tough for me to choose in this because of how well George McIntyre played, and the fact that that CPA gave up 146. But I just can't get past the running game of CPA. I think that they just run the ball too well. I think they are good. And again, London Humphreys is just so many weapons there that they have that it was just hard to pick against CPA.
Yeah, it was hard for me as well. Again, you mentioned the run game. I thought that was a great win for them over Independence last week. Brentwood Academy in a shootout. Great night, as you mentioned. George McIntyre, 24-33 and 296, a couple scores. Impressive numbers. It was real close for me on this one as well. Brentwood Academy also playing at home, but I really just like the CPA team.
All right. On to the next one. It's Franklin at Page. And, Reggie can't talk, so we're not going to let him take his pick. But the rest of us are taking Page. Scott, why don't you start us off?
I really like this Franklin team based on what they did last week, but it's still, you just don't know. I mean, the defense was impressive. They held Riverdale to 2 TDs, like we talked about before, held Riverdale to 7 first downs and 128 yards. But the question that we had about Page was offensively. We knew their defense was good. I think they answered that question. Colin Hurd threw for 200 yards passing. Max Collins had 161 receiving yards, and their defense played extremely well. So I think in this particular case, I think you're going to see a little bit more offense out of the Patriots than they saw out of Riverdale, and we'll learn more about this Franklin team after this game.
Yeah, I think I like both defenses for both of these teams, and both defenses had a great showing the week one. But again, that Page offense maybe just a little bit better. I think Page gets it done at home.
Yeah, I really think Max Collins is a difference maker in this game. Last week in Fairview, that game was 0-0 there for a long time, and then midway through the second, Max Collins goes up in double coverage, yanks the ball down, scampers in from 60 yards out. Really think that he's the difference for the Patriots offense. I like Page, but in a close one.
Yeah, it could be a low-scoring game again this week, too, if Franklin's defense does come to play like they did in week one. Let's turn the page. To page 2. Guys, nobody bet on that? Really? Come on. Gallatin and Blackman, we talked about this game a little bit earlier in the show. Tom and I are both on Blackman. And, Tom, if you will indulge me, I'll start this one. Here's my thing on Blackman. they are going to finish drives better than they did in week 1. I have no doubt about that. Gallatin's my question. Defensively, can they cover long enough? Can they hold the ball long enough? Brentwood held the ball for 32 minutes against Blackman last week. I think Gallatin probably needs to duplicate that or exceed it if they're to win this game, because they're going to have to run all over the place to get these Blackman receivers covered. There's so many weapons on that side, and it starts with Ben Marshall, and he's my X factor in this game. He had 200 yards receiving in week 1. Very good chance he could get there again if they're not careful. So I'd like Blackman to bounce back, but I also like Gallatin to be a pretty good showing in this one. This could be a very, very good ball game. Tom?
Yeah, I agree. And I look for this Blackman offense to bounce back, just looking at what they were able to do, moving the ball last week, but still just only putting 14 points on the board. Again, as we talked about earlier, the offense is not going to be the problem for Blackman, but, still a little reluctant looking at Gallatin. I thought that was a great week 1 win for them over Mount Juliet. I think this Gallatin team is going to pose a challenge for Blackman. I look for this to be a close game, but I think the Blackman offense gets back on track.
All right. Cam?
Yeah, this is the game that I have circled for me on Friday night. If I'm able to make it out to a ball game this Friday, this is where I will be. To me, I picked Gallatin just off of matchups. Blackman's question coming into the season was the rushing defense. Brentwood, they had a good performance against Brentwood as far as limiting the run, but I really like Gallatin's rushing attack, putting up 400 yards rushing on a Mount Juliet defense that has a SEC linebacker. I really like that. And I also like the secondary for the Green Wave. I think they're a little underrated with Jaheim Merriweather and Zach Cook back there on the back end. Jaheim getting, with multiple Division I offers, and Zach Cook with some small Division I offers. Just really like this Green Wave. And, another person asked me about this game, and I referenced when you get on this horse, you got to ride it. Well, when you get on the wave, you got to ride it. And I like the Green Wave to get another big win in week 2.
Scott?
Yeah, well, Blackman gave up 226 yards on the ground to Brentwood. Brentwood didn't really even need to pass. I think they threw for maybe 23 yards, something like that. And now here comes Gallatin with 400 yards rushing. And against, like as Cam said, against a defense that has some high-quality linebacking core. I just see Gallatin being able to run this ball and making a point to grind this game. Now, Blackman won't want to. Blackman will want to throw. So if they can get a stop here or there, I think that Gallatin can control this game and run the ball. I think that we've not seen with Luke Cook out there, he's mobile. He ran for 100 yards. Brinkley ran for 100 yards. Merriweather ran for 90. I think that there are a lot of weapons that Blackman's going to have to keep up with on the Gallatin side. So I think that if Gallatin can run the ball like they showed last week, they'll come out on top.
I'm going to throw out a number. Just a key number for that in my mind for this week is 34 minutes. I think Gallatin needs the ball for 34 minutes to win this game. If they don't get there, that means they're struggling a little bit in rushing. They may only rush for 350 instead of 400.
Valid point.
There, I said it. Next up, Station Camp at Hillsboro, one of these early region games that you don't hardly see very much. Tom and Cam have both got Hillsboro. Cam, I'm going to let you start.
Yeah, I really like this Hillsboro team. I think they were a little young last year. I believe they've matured enough. I believe they competed in that game against Pope Prep last week for a while. Station Camp coming off a big win against White House. But basically, I just like the athleticism of this Hillsboro team to be able to score a few more points than Station Camp.
Yeah, this Hillsboro team, this was a tough game for me. Just kind of strange, Station Camp with the 27-6 win over White House last week. I was pretty impressed by that. Then you got Hillsboro taking on a good Pope Prep team. And again, like Cam mentioned, hanging around some for a while in that game. And in this being a region game here early in the season and a big region game, I think Hillsboro takes a big step up this year. I think they're going to be more competitive and make a little noise this year. Again, I went back and forth, guys, but I may have just gave it to home field when it was all said and done and went with Hillsboro.
Scott?
Yeah, well, Hillsborough they struggled last week, and they struggled against a good Pope Prep team. They couldn't get off the field on the first 3 drives because Pope Prep scored on 3 of 4 of their 4 first drives. The stat that really jumped out to me, though, was that they only had 1 first down in the second half, and that means that they were struggling against the defense to get points on the board when they were down fairly significantly. I think the Bison defense they got better. They last week they allowed 123 yards in the first quarter. Then after that it was 130 the rest of the way. This Station Camp defense is growing. It's getting better. You can see the improvement as the way it was during the game, and their rushing attack is strong. So I like Station Camp in this game.
I think this is a close ball game. I think the way Hillsborough played Pope early on in that game last week was a good sign for them moving forward, even though they lost by 20 points. If this game is maybe a month later in the season, I might pick Hillsborough. But for right now, I think Station Camp is still the better team here. I'm going with Bison to get a region win on the road. Watertown to Gordonsville is next on the list. Tom and Reggie have the Tigers. Tom, why don't you start us off here?
I just look for Gordonsville to bounce back, and Watertown had a tough week 1 game. Of course, they're playing a very good Fayetteville team, so when you look at that 36-12 score, don't think Watertown's that far down by any means, because Fayetteville's a very, very good team. But I just look for Gordonsville to bounce back. They're going to be back at home. They've licked their wounds. You know they've got to be pretty ticked off about the performance the other night. I think they match up a little bit better with Watertown. Just look for them to get back in the win column and get a win at home against the Watertown Purple Tigers.
Yeah, looking at, I'm assuming you want me to go, Chris. Jump right in there. I think that Watertown, they came out of the gate against Fayetteville really hot. Came out and really took it to them, and then they self-destructed. They had way too many turnovers, interceptions, turned the ball over too many times, and that's what got them. That's typical first game problems. Those are the things that happen: penalties, errors, things of that nature. They've got a really good running back in Kwame C. I think their offense is a little bit more dynamic, and I still just don't know that Gordonsville has the weapons in place yet that is who they want. And then you have that injury question hanging over it. So I just think that the Purple Tigers will have the edge this week.
Cam?
Yeah, the injury bug for Gordonsville really tilted the needle for me to the Purple Tigers. That, as well as Watertown's defense, is solid. And one thing that I think is going to surprise people with Watertown this year is their offense still is dynamic, but it's more smash mouth than it has been the last 4 years with Braden Cousineau graduating last year at quarterback. I look for the Purple Tigers to try to take a page out of Smith County's playbook and really grind this game down. And I look for them. The first team to 14 is going to win, and I just think that I kind of lean Watertown right now at the moment.
I feel like Gordonsville is going to take some lumps with this schedule because they're playing up a couple of classes in the first couple of weeks. It's good for them later on this year, but it may not necessarily be great for the overall record. But as we all talk about, it doesn't matter unless you win in regions. So it may be a lumpy start for Gordonsville, but they will pay off for them later on. Westmoreland, Macon County. Reggie is taking the Eagles. The rest of us are on the Tigers. Scott, why don't you take us off?
Yeah, last week, Macon County, they pulled away late against East Robertson, but, they did flex their muscle, that offensive line, with 2 100-yard rushers. Offensively, they did allow for 2 from East Robertson. So it's going to be interesting to see how they fare against a much better defense. I think Mason Swindle has to have one great game on both sides of the ball for them to do. But I don't expect them to give up the big play as much as they did last week against Westmoreland. I think this is a 7-6 game, 14-13 type of game. I think that both these teams are going to beat up on each other, but I just think in the end, Macon County just has a little bit more offense than Westmoreland does.
Yeah, I agree, Scott. Sunday during our scoreboard show, we talked about the question's still out on Westmoreland. We knew they had a good defense, but 14 points is not going to win every game this year. And this is one of those games where I believe Macon County is going to score 14 points against Westmoreland. And if they do, Westmoreland is going to have to outscore them. And Westmoreland has not answered that question yet for me. That's why I leaned towards the Tigers. But this could go either way. A little bit of a backstory here. The two key backs for Macon County, Gabe and Zach Borders, actually played Pee Wee football at Westmoreland and then moved to Macon County their 8th grade year. So a little bit, you talk about a rivalry game, that doesn't help matters. And they also have a cousin that is a senior defensive lineman there for the Eagles. So that is a huge rivalry game and bragging rights in the Borders family.
Yeah, this pick came down to me thinking that Macon County's offense is just a little bit better. I did, again, think Westmoreland's win over Portland last week was good. Certainly we know their defense is good. But, again, Scott, I think you pointed it out. We don't know about the offense. They've not yet to prove that they can take that next step up. And I just think Macon County in that department is just a little bit better.
Yeah, for me, this is a race to 20 points. Whoever gets their wins. I think Macon County can score 20. I don't know that Westmoreland can, and that's the difference for me in this one. One more game to pick, and it is our Spotlight Series game of this week, Pearl Cone at NBA. All 4 of us are taking NBA, and Cam, I'll let you start this round.
Yeah, just watching what little bit I got to watch of that game against Ravenwood. I really love Marcel Reed. He's super in control of the game. They never wavered. They jumped up 13-0. Ravenwood scored to make it 13-6. They score back and forth. NBA never missed a beat on the offensive side of the ball. Jonathan Moore had a big game. Really love this NBA team. It's not a knock on Pearl at all. They're a really good football team. I look for them to rebound starting next week. But 2 rough matchups to start the season for the Firebirds. I just think this might be NBA's year, guys. I mean, I really think that they could be on a mission to go undefeated.
Yeah, I like NBA in this game. I thought last week was a real statement for them. Big win. Pearl Cone, really coming out of the gate with 2 tough tests for them when you get Cane Ridge and NBA back-to-back weeks. I just like I like this NBA team. I think they're going to go far this year.
Yeah. Pearl looked a little bit disjointed, out of sync, and Keyshawn Tarleton seemed to be off on his passes. But I really don't know whether it's that or a receiver issue or a communication issue. Speed got him back in the game, but I just don't. I don't think that this is a game you get better at. I think this particular matchup is not going to make them well. You got Eric George and Gabe Fisher. Eric George is 6'3", 265. Gabe Fisher, 6'2", 240 up front. I think they're going to get pressure. I think they're going to force Pearl to pass. If they get up 2 scores, the game is really may get away. I think that, but I agree with Cam and Tom. I think that NBA is better than they've been in years. And, if you've looked at our show in the past, I think you see that I think that NBA is set up to run the table. So.
Yeah, Scott, you mentioned that the game that it may not be getting well for Pearl Cone. They'll get better as a result of this game, but the scoreboard may not reflect it this week. And there's 3 question marks by Reggie's pick. Let's see who he took this week.
He's made his selection, and his selection is Montgomery Bell Academy.
Well, there you have it. Clean sweep on NBA for this week. Reggie didn't like that. I don't think he liked it too much. He got taunted right there. So Reggie's taking the big red as well. All 5 of us are on NBA. So let's just recap these picks real quick before we get out of here. Liberty Creek of Portland. It's all Portland on that one. Tom has Rockville over Smyrna. The rest are on the Bulldogs. Scott's got DeKalb County. The rest of us have Smith County. Cam's taking Brentwood Academy over CPA. The rest of us are on the Lions. Reggie's got Franklin over Page, and the rest of us on the Patriots. Tom and I are on Blackman over Gallatin. The rest of them have the Green Wave. Tom and Cam have Hillsborough over Station Camp, and the rest of us have the Bison. Tom and Reggie have Gordonsville. The rest of us have Watertown. Reggie's got West Woodland over Macon County. The rest of us are on the Tigers. And all 5 of us have the Big Red of MBA. And that is one final look at who you got. Guys, that is about as much damage as we can do for a week. What do you say? One more word?
Yeah, I mentioned Sunday in the scoreboard show. This week is one of the biggest weeks of the season. A team, you've really figured out what you had in week 1. You figured out what you needed to work on. How many teams and which teams figured it out, made those corrections in week 2? Which teams even made more mistakes and have to really dig deep to find some momentum in the middle of their season?
And guys, for a lot of these teams, this is the last tune-up before region play gets started. Let's be real. All these good matchups in week 1 or 2, we love to see them, but they count little or less, I should say, than the region games that will be coming up next week. Everybody wants to be playing the best ball when they go into region play. Those are the games that get you to the playoffs. So let's enjoy this last week of mostly tune-ups. We'll get into the really big, key, pivotal matchup starting next week.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. And this is the week that you really start to have to crack down on mistakes. You got to crack down on penalties. You got to crack down on turnovers. You start to solidify your lineups. You're actually seeing against live opponents who can play, who fits where, who's got what seat on the bus. I think that last week we were all kind of taken aback by some of the results. This week will answer some of those questions for us. Was it a first week fluke, or was it is your program actually going in the direction that you think it is?
Yep. Yeah, and as Tom mentioned right before region play, for those teams in Region 5 Class 4A, this is the last non-region game of the year because it's all region play from there in that 9-team region. Yeah. Rough road for those guys. Shout out to Davidson Academy and Republic. They begin their seasons this year after having week 1 off. Mount Juliet is a lone area team, but that has week 2 off this week. So that's it for us. I am actually out of town this week. I'll be in the mountains with my family for the first time in 4 years. So I will be monitoring games on Friday night, but not covering anything. Scott will be at Portland, Liberty Creek. So will Cam on Thursday night. And Scott will be at NBA against Pearl Cone on Friday. Cam may be at Gallatin Blackman on Friday to be determined. Tom, where are you Friday?
I will be in Baxter as Upperman will be hosting Trousdale County, and Upperman a great showing in week 1. I know they're just outside of our coverage area, but a team to watch in Class 4A this year. And, of course, can Trousdale County get back on course this week? I think it's going to be tough playing at Baxter. Trousdale County, a tough loss at Friendship last week, but 2 traditional schools that have won a whole lot of ball games over the years, Trousdale County and Upperman.
All right. Good stuff, guys. Thanks for the show this week. Thank you all for watching. Thanks to our sponsors, Miracle Auto Group and Innovate Medical, for their sponsorship of 615 Preps in the Midstate 48 this year. For Tom Duggan, Cam Reed, Scott Burton, I'm Chris Brooks. We will talk to you Saturday on the Scoreboard Show and this week time next week on Midstate 48. Enjoy the games this week. Take care, everybody.